Welcome to our guinea pig to green thumb virtual gardening series. This is the first from the Mississippi Modern Homestead. We're attempting to teach all of you at home what we would be able to teach you at the homestead during one of our classes or events. And so we welcome you into this adventure, and we're excited to know that you're eager to learn how to grow some of your own food. Gardening allows you to save a lot of money on naturally grown foods and also to access foods that you might not be able to in your grocery store, in your own backyard. It also reconnects you to nature and to the cycle of things. It's been good for our family. It's improved our health, it's improved our connection to our place, and it's something that I would never give up now that we've overcome a lot of the initial obstacles. And that's what we want to teach you in this series. That it's not hard, it's not complicated, it's actually fairly simple if you know some basic things. Why do you want to have a garden?
I always wanted a garden. I just think that it's, I like the process of growing things, but never food. I've never done food. I've done house plants and stuff, and I think that health-wise, it's good for you to grow your own stuff too. If you're too lazy to go to the grocery store, you can go to your backyard, and pick your own things, If you don't want to get ready and go out, you can just go to your backyard and grab what you need to cook something. And I just think it's interesting and healthier lifestyle for you.
Okay.
So.
And why haven't you done it up until this point?
I'm lazy.
Okay.
No, I mean, partly that. I mean, you just get the motivation to do it and wanting to do it, but never getting around to do it.
Right.
And the other part is, just the know-how, the knowledge of when, where, how to plant, what to rotate, what's in season, where you live, what zone are you, what zone does the back of the plant pack say you are this time,
right.
As opposed to all the others. So, just not the knowledge to get out there and do it.
Okay. Part one of our series is building strong soil. Strong soil makes for strong plants. We're also going to talk in the series about soil amendments and setting up a rain barrel. We build all our beds in Mississippi on top of the soil. This is after we've tried all the methods of tilling that were available on the internet and at Lowe's and the co-op. Tilling for us just really wasn't very successful. And so we started building our beds and gardens up on top of the soil. We do this for a couple of reasons. First of all, it makes it a lot easier to keep out weeds if you put some kind of barrier down first. So we always start with cardboard at the bottom. We loosen the soil underneath, and when we grow the second season, our roots have a lot of place to move. When you put the cardboard down, it attracts worms, and so the worms do most of the breaking up the soil underneath for you. We use a method called lasagna gardening, where you layer organic materials to create rich composts. Right now you're going to see Matt and I build his bed. We started with 4 2x8s, and they're untreated wood. We use untreated wood. We'll talk about this later, but untreated wood is better for the health of the plants, and it's better for the health of the people eating the plants eventually. So we keep untreated wood. A lot of people say, well, it might not last that long, but it actually lasts us about 5 years. The tool I have in my hand is called a dribble tool. It's not for loosening soil, but it allows us to loosen the soil just a little bit underneath the cardboard that we're going to put down. I use a broad fork as well, but they're very expensive and mine has walked off. So this is what we've been using in the meantime. You can tell the soil is really compacted and really hard and eroded, so we're not getting very far, but we're just giving a little bit loose to let the worms start to do their work once we put the cardboard down in place. And the dribble just moves back a few inches each time. We start with a weed barrier like cardboard or several thin layers of newspaper. Newspaper doesn't last very long, so I really like cardboard if you can get a hold of it. Matt, in his video, he had the end of a newsprint that he gathered at the newspaper printing company. It's the part of the roll that they throw away when they don't use it. And so we used a couple layers of that on top of the cardboard because there were a few holes in it. You're not going to cover every single inch. There are always cracks. The main point is to kill the majority of the grass that you're building up on and to encourage worms to start coming to your garden area. And then we put leaves, 2 bags of leaves that we have in our leaf pile from the fall, and a bag of grass clippings. I just had a little bag on the back of my lawnmower and cut those fresh that morning. You can also use kitchen waste. If you chop up vegetables and things, you can put those into. And then on top of that, we'll put a couple of bags of compost and a couple of bags of just plain gardening soil. This way you're not having to buy as much garden soil as it would take to fill up the bed. So it's really using a lot of inexpensive materials and free materials that you can find just about anywhere to fill up your garden bed. And there's not a right or wrong. You can use pretty much anything you have. I like to build lasagna beds in the fall because people put bags of leaves out on the curb and they're already bagged up for me and ready to go. I can't imagine why they throw those away. But now you can see Matt and I are just laying out his garden plot, and he's just about to screw a couple of the boards together. This is something that even I can do, even though Mike doesn't like me to use his drill. It's really not too hard. Matt had a pretty small drill and it worked just fine to get the screws into the corner of the board. You can also paint the outside of the boards when you're done. As long as you're not painting the inside of the board, the outside should be fine if you don't like the way that the natural wood looks, or you could stain it. And we just squared those up and put those right on top of the cardboard, and he screwed those in fairly easily with a not too heavy duty drill. I wanted to say earlier that the entire cost of this lesson was $76. That included the boards, the amendments, and the rain barrel from the co-op. It also included 2 bags of compost and 2 bags of garden soil. But you'll see those in just a minute. It's not going to be a very deep bed that you're building the first season around. We're not really concerned about having a deep bed because eventually the roots are going to grow into the soil beneath the bed. The first season, though, you will have enough soil in your beds to grow a really good on top of the very shallow rooted garden. So things like kale and lettuce and spinach, any kind of leafy green, and those are perfect for the fall. You can go ahead and grow those your very first season. As long as you loosen the soil first, the second season, all of that cardboard and paper at the bottom is going to decompose. It's going to break apart, and your roots will start to sink into the deeper part of the soil. So you're really just giving a good top dressing to what's going to eventually be up to, I don't know, 2 to 3 feet is how deep the roots go in gardens sometimes. And your pile will shrink. Don't worry about that as the things decompose that you put inside it. When you layer all your leaves and things, at first they'll be pretty fluffy, and over the week you're going to think, oh my gosh, this thing is emptying out, and it is. It will shrink down probably up to 3 times the size of what you originally put in, and that's fine. That's not a problem at all. The rule for compost is about 2 to 4 times as much dead material as live. Sometimes you'll hear it called brown to green, carbon to nitrogen. Basically, I just say dead to alive. So leaves and things that are brown are dead. Straw is dead. Grass that's dried out is dead. Green things are things that came straight out of your kitchen, or if you cut fresh grass to put into your bed, those are green things. You really can't overdo it or underdo it. If it starts to get a little bit mushy, just add some more brown. Really, brown is more abundant, so it kind of naturally works itself out anyway. Like I said, I like to use leaves because they're free. There are a million of them this time of year about to come. And fall is really a good time to start building on lasagna beds. Even if you don't plant them all this fall, build them in the fall and then they'll be perfectly ready to go in the spring. As you can see, we're not covering up every single speck of grass with the cardboard. And so Matt had some newspaper roll that he got, and we decided to kind of cover up most of the cracks in the grass with a couple layers of that, just to give them a good head start on the weeds. Again, you can build this like in a corner of a yard if you just want a bed against a patio. You don't have to have wood around it. I like the wood around it because it holds things in place, and it also it gives you a fighting chance about keeping the weeds out from the rest of the lawn. It's a little bit easier. The grass that we have in Mississippi, the centipede grass, will crawl in pretty easily if you don't have some kind of barrier like the boards. You can see we covered it with a couple of layers. It doesn't have to be that thick. Like I said, all of this is going to decompose. I've had questions about newsprint and is it safe? Most newspapers use soy-based print now, and it's perfectly fine to put all of that in your garden. The worms will eat it up and turn it into compost. Pretty soon after you put your layers down and you water, if you peek underneath, you'll start to see a bunch of different, a bunch of worms will move toward your garden area. I don't know why, but they really like covered up dark places, and they love to eat cardboard. So now we're entering the bags of leaves in, and there's nothing special about them. Like I said, grab them on the side of the road. I love it when people bag them up for me and put them there. I had 2 bags of leaves to 1 bag of grass clippings. That was about the ratio I wanted to use in this garden. And so the bulk of your garden is just free material that didn't cost much of anything. If you can find boards that have already been used on something else, they don't have to be anything special. There's nothing magic about using new boards. Most of our small garden is built up of boards that came down off of a house down the road. You just spread the leaves out. And like I said, these are going to shrink down a lot in the first week. Matt's going to keep it moist, and it's going to shrink down a lot. After we put the grass clippings on, we layered the next layer with black cow compost. I think those costs, I don't know, about $4 to $6, $7 a bag. So you don't want to fill up your entire bed with something that costs a lot, like bagged compost or bagged soil. You can get a load of dirt for $30 at the co-op, but this way, if you if you have a truck, you can do that. A truckload costs about $30. But it's still not going to be very strong soil, and the more organic material you can get into your bed, the better. We talked a little bit about the border. If money were not an object, and you never wanted to move, if you knew you never wanted to move your bed, cedar wood would probably be the best. Bugs don't like it, and it's very tough even without any kind of protective toxic material on it. So cedar would be the best if you knew that, but it's very expensive. Cinder blocks are something I used for a while, and I really liked them. I liked that you could plant herbs and flowers into the side of them, into the holes on the side of your garden. Recently, we read about 25% of cinder blocks have a material in them that's pretty toxic to humans and animals and plants. And you can't tell which cinder blocks have those and which don't, so we've really moved away from using cinder blocks. We've got a ton of them if anybody wants to come take them away from us. Really, we just use, like I said, we just use untreated lumber. I think each board in the video costs $5 and a couple cents, but they'll last about 5 years. They do rot eventually. Usually when they rot, we kind of just build another bed right around them in our garden, and the rotted boards just fall into the garden and become part of it. So again, we're just filling in the garden with compost on top of the organic material. Organic material just means anything that's living. And the key to healthy soil, a couple of things. The key to healthy soil is to get as many beneficial microorganisms is the term. But the better, the more good living things you can get into your soil, the better your soil will be able to fight off the bad living things like pests and diseases and things like that. And so the number one rule in organic gardening is strong soil equals strong plants. Now you can see we're just putting on just very cheap topsoil that goes on. It's not nearly as pretty as the compost, but we'll break it up, and it really won't matter pretty soon. And again, you just try to cover all the other material. And this way, this method that we use gives about 2 inches of dirt, and you really can grow right into it. So next week, when we go to Matt's house, we'll be actually putting plants into the garden. And if you need an extra bag, you can do it, but it's not going to matter if every little bit is covered. People say, well, I can't plant into it. Not all of my compost is broken down into dirt. It's got plenty of room for the roots to grow underneath the dirt. The amendments are the second most important thing, other than getting a lot of organic material into your beds. We use the complete organic fertilizer formula, and that's going to be in your handout packet as well. It was created by a guy who owns Territorial Seed Company. He sold that company now, and he's living off the land somewhere in, I guess, like Tanzania. But this is his formula, and it's what he uses every year. This is what I've gone to. I used to buy a lot of different products and tried a lot of different products, and this is really makes it easy for me. It's 4 parts cottonseed meal, 1 part lime, 1 part blood or bone meal, and 1 part kelp meal. And our co-op carries every single one of those things right now. And if yours doesn't, just ask them to start carrying it, and they will. Ours didn't carry anything but the cottonseed meal and the lime at the beginning. And it didn't carry a lot of the different organic pest controls and natural pest controls that we use now, but they've been great, and they carry almost everything we need now. So here are Matt and I putting together the parts that are going to go into his garden. Cottonseed meal is a little bit controversial because cotton is so heavily sprayed. You'll hear me say organic gardening. I try to say natural gardening. Organic is a charged term now. What I really mean is that I'm trying to grow without as many chemicals as I can, simply for the sake of keeping my kids safe and keeping our food safe and keeping our land safe. I also just don't think it's necessary, and I don't like paying companies for things that I don't really need. There's the kelp meal right there. So we mix those 4 parts together, and then Matt will put those into his garden. A part is anything you want to use. So we use that little cup for our part, which was plenty for this size. If I'm doing a large garden, I might use a 5-gallon bucket for my part, and it would be 4 parts, which would mean 4 buckets of cottonseed meal, 1 bucket of lime, 1 bucket of kelp, and 1 bucket of blood meal or bone meal. You just mix them together, and I'll use a wheelbarrow if it's a larger space, and just sprinkle them on top. I'm not very precise about it. They say up to 1/4 of an inch. 1/4 of an inch to me means just sprinkling it over the entire surface of your garden. And I do that right before we plant in the fall and right before we plant in the spring. And then you water it in. You want to get enough water in your bed to really start soaking the cardboard. Again, the point of the cardboard is to block out weeds, but also once it's wet, that's when those worms start coming in and doing their magic. If you find a healthy garden bed, it's going to be full of worms. If you come out to the homestead and look in our garden beds, we've got worms all in them. And I know if we don't have worms in a bed that something's missing, something's not right. So Matt's completed his garden bed. It took us 43 minutes from start to finish, not including gathering the materials, to get that going. We also bought a rain barrel for the price. The included price, $76 was the first bill. I just wanted to let you know that it's not exorbitant to grow. And you'll have a handout about about setting up a rain barrel that's coming along with your materials. And we bought one for Matt, and he'll be putting it up. He needs to put in a gutter on top of his and a downspout under his garage to catch some of the water. But the reason you do it is that plants really prefer rainwater. Our city water is heavily chlorinated. I just got back our water test, and the chlorine's within the health limits, but it's still very high. And chlorine kills all those beneficial microorganisms you're trying to get in your soil. It's just, that's what it does. It sterilizes and kills them. And so you really don't want to put that in your garden unless you have to. This is our rain barrel, one of them, at the Homestead Center. There's a hose coming out the bottom, you can see, and we use that hose to water this little flower garden right here. And it's just like the one that Matt's going to have at his place. Raised beds at the homestead, and you can see you can put a lot of different things together in one bed. This is generally what we do in order to confuse pests. Okay, so your homework this week is to actually build your bed. Just one small raised bed lasagna garden style, to add your amendments, and if you have time, you can set up your rain barrel. We're thinking the time required is 1 hour to run to the co-op and get your materials, 25 minutes to gather your leaves and grass. Took me 10 minutes to fill up a bag of grass with grass clippings, and about 20 minutes to shovel leaves in from a leaf pile. And then 45 minutes to build your garden bed. We'd love to see pictures of what you do online. Also, the question and answer forum will be open from the time that you receive this until the following week when the next one comes out. So please ask any question. There aren't any dumb questions. I promise you I've asked all the questions that you can even think of. And we really want you to succeed, and we want to see what you've done in your backyards.